Hi guys, Nick here from Intuitive Tennis. In today's video we're going to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of both the one-handed backhand return and the two-handed backhand return. Which one is better? Check out today's video and find out. Let's start off with the advantages of the one-handed backhand return. And the first advantage one-handed return players have is that they have better ability to slice and chip the return back in play. And great examples are Stan Wawrinka and Roger Federer, who very often will chip the return back in play, keep the ball low, and prevent the other person to be aggressive or maybe even to draw an error this way. So one-handed players are more experienced in slicing the backhand because, number one, they play with one hand all the time, and so their slice techniques are a little bit more adaptable to their game. Two-handed players often struggle at the junior level, at the recreational level, or even at the WTA level with slice backhand, simply because they're not used to playing with one arm, and maybe they don't practice the shot too much. So when they play a match, they're likely not going to choose the option of chipping the return back. So one-handed return players are a little bit more, have a little bit more variety when it comes to return to serve.
No way.
In a practice match, but he didn't mean to get this angle. This is just about getting that return back. But look at the execute.
One-handed backhand players are often more comfortable when it comes to one-handed shots on the backhand side. Because they always play with one hand, there's an advantage if the ball comes to the body, where a two-hander might have to move out of the way to hit the backhand. If that player is uncomfortable hitting a one-handed shot, a one-handed player can simply have his racket in the middle of his body, and he can cover a body serve a little bit easier if they're used to playing with one hand. And the biggest advantage of having a one-handed backhand return is on the block. And the block is going to occur further in front than it would on a two-handed player. And because with two hands, we can't reach as far in front. And you can look from this view. We can't reach as far in front if we just simply attempt to block the return back, where a one-handed player can get that racket a little bit more in front of the body. And Roger Federer is the master of blocking returns back in play, even for winners sometimes. And you can see here that the arm is extended and the racket is further in front, and that is an advantage on the one-handed backhand return. One disadvantage of returning with one hand is that the grip changes are slightly larger. So most players will wait for the one-handed return of serve in a grip that's between a continental grip and an eastern grip. Some people call this the Australian grip, is on that edge between continental and eastern. That's where most two-handed players and one-handed players wait on the return. So if I get a backhand on the return, now I have a slightly larger grip change than a two-handed player would. So there is a slight disadvantage when it comes to the one-handed backhand return. Another disadvantage of returning with one hand is that the serve bounces very high. Let's say on a high kick serve, it's very difficult to return high with one hand. There's a big advantage with two hands here. So the one-handed player is forced to improvise when the ball gets a little higher, or they have to start tinkering with the timing, where they maybe take the ball a little bit earlier, or they back up and let the ball drop. But on stationary returns, on a high kick serve, there's definitely a disadvantage when it comes to high balls. The biggest disadvantage of having a one-handed backhand return is the inability to take a full swing. And you can even see this at the highest level. When Roger Federer hits backhand return winners, they're usually block return winners. And some of the greatest block returners of all time were Roger Federer, Michael Stich and Boris Becker, and they could simply absorb the pace from the server, and with a very minimal swing, as just here to here, they would be able to block the return for a winner and just basically take all the pace from the serve. This is, however, very difficult to do, and it requires excellent timing. And the reason why one-handed returners have a hard time taking full swings is that the one-handed backhand generally requires more of a shoulder turn. So if you hit a backhand, it's very difficult to get the racket all the way back if we don't turn our shoulders. If you even turn them a little bit, we can take it a little further back, but if you get a full shoulder turn, and naturally this racket goes all the way back. So when a fast serve comes, there's not going to be a full shoulder turn, and therefore the player will simply go like this, and he won't be able to turn all the way, and he will just block the ball back. Where a two-handed player has a big advantage in this regard, where two-handed players almost always are able to take a fuller swing, players like Djokovic, Agassi, and Nalbandian, because with two hands we can take the racket back without a shoulder turn with the help of the left hand. So you can see here that even without me turning all the way, I can still get that racket tip pointing towards the back fence, and I can take a fuller swing, and therefore I can generate my own power. The two-handed backhand return has many advantages over the one-handed backhand return. And one slight advantage could be that most players wait in an Australian grip, as we already discussed. And so from the Australian grip to a continental is a minimal grip change. See, this is just a small little change here, and this can happen very quick. So that's one advantage for the two-hander versus the one-hander. Another advantage the two-hander has is high serves. Obviously, we have the high ball here. With two hands, we can use that left hand to help the ball back over the net. We do not have this option on the one-handed return. So high balls, high kicking serves are definitely easier for the two-handed return player. Stability is another reason why the two-hander has an advantage over the one-hander. And when the ball comes at a great speed on the serve, if you simply have contact with two hands, there's greater stability than if the same is done with one hand. Junior players or even recreational players will find a great instability on hard serves with one hand, and therefore they will go for the chip most of the time. There's a lot of pressure being absorbed on a hard serve with one hand, and also the fingers are in front of the racket on the one hand. And so if a lot of force comes this way, this racket might get pushed back a little bit. Where in the two hand, this is not a problem at all. With two hands, we have the other hand behind the racket, and on very hard serves, we have the stability at contact that we need to be able to hit a clean shot. And the biggest advantage the two-hander has over the one-hander is the ability to take full swings. You will notice that the greatest returners of all time, Novak Djokovic and Andre Agassi, would rarely block the return back in play like the one-handers do. If you look at the racket will always, on the two-handed return, go back to the back fence. So the tip of the racket will go to the back fence, and they will take a fuller swing, usually to about right here, and sometimes they will finish it even a little bit more. And this happens even on fast serves. And the reason for this is that the two-handed backhand requires less of a shoulder turn. So we can make a small turn here, and we still have the ability to get the racket all the way back and then take a moderate swing at the ball. And not only are we using the pace, but we also are giving the ball a little bit of extra, and this can create phenomenal returns. And this is definitely an advantage for the two-handers.
Y ahora con el revés.
Second set. Motion.
C'est mise en route. Côté serbe. Et quel retour.
He moves forward, cuts it off.
The clear winner between the one-handed backhand return and the two-handed backhand return is the two-handed backhand return. With very few disadvantages. The only disadvantage I can think of would be maybe at the recreational level or even at the junior level or the WTA level, where players maybe are not comfortable slicing the backhand or chipping it back. It kind of leaves the variety out of the game for those players on the return to serve. Or maybe they can get jammed on the body serve sometimes and they're uncomfortable using one hand. That is about it. I don't really see this as a problem on the ATP because most two-handed players on the ATP also possess a great slice backhand, such as Novak Djokovic or Alexander Zverev. So the clear winner on the return is the two-handed backhand. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment in the section below. I will be happy to respond. Hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you next time.